Hi, and welcome to The Curling Show, the podcast that brings you interviews with the sport's top athletes and the people who shape the game. Brought to you by The Curling News, Canada's first and only national curling newspaper, and now, after 50 years, a world authority on the sport. You know, when you get The Curling News, you get analysis, you get behind-the-scenes stories, you get great photos and information you just don't find elsewhere, including this year, the first ever printed TV curling guide, listing all the event coverage. You can read the blog at curlnews.blogspot.com like I do. You can check out the controversial top 15 rankings on thecurlingnews.com, but you still need the printed version. So if you're a curling fan, do yourself a favor and subscribe to the Curling News by calling 1-800-605-CURL, 1-800-605-CURL, or go to thecurlingnews.com. I'm Dean Gemmell, and in this edition, we talk to a guy who's won Brier titles with 3 different skips and has been competing on the World Curling Tour since I had a mullet and a leather tie. A 3-time world champion and a good bet to win any Brier when his team appears in it. Ian Tetley, welcome to the Curling Show.
Well, thanks very much, Dean. Glad to be here.
Hey, Ian, first of all, I want to talk about a number of things, but let's start with last weekend in the Shorty Jenkins Classic, where your team ran through the pool 5-0 and then ran into Glenn Howard in the quarterfinals. And lost to Glenn, who eventually won the Spiel. With John Mead in the lineup, how did everything go?
It went great. Actually, Johnny's pretty easygoing and pretty easy guy to curl with. You know, he makes a lot of shots, and you know, off the ice he's just as easy to be with though too. So he definitely fit in with the other 3 guys.
You know, Ian, first of all, I got to thank you for being on the show, despite the fact you know that I've asked Wayne Middaugh if you are indeed a tough guy to curl with. Proof that even though you're willing to share opinions, you don't mind when other people voice them as well. The interesting thing, when I asked Wayne that question, he said he'd love to play with you because you win. And he's right. You've been to 4 Briers and won 3 of them. A percentage I'm pretty sure that nobody else with that many appearances can match. What ingredient do you think you've brought to teams to help them succeed?
Wow, that's a tough question. I've got a passion to win, and I guess I like to play smart. I like to play the odds. I think to me, it's, you know, I've been very fortunate to play with the likes of, you know, obviously Al Hackner and Eddie Wernick and obviously Wayne. But to me, you know, it's all about angles and creating the angles for yourself and making those shots. And I guess I've always been a big proponent for playing the odds shot and playing smart and going for the setup rather than always having to go for the big shot. I like to win at heart and play hard, and, you know, and once you're off the ice, it's like, thanks for the game, but then let's have a drink and enjoy each other's company.
When you say that, I mean, you're a guy, I think, who does have a lot of input into strategy. At second, how do you think you do that in a way that is effective?
I don't know. I guess it's funny that the guys kid me. You know, you put me in the house and I'm like a deer in the headlights. Definitely not comfortable there. But from the other end of the sheet, you know, I guess, you know, you play a lot of games and you kind of learn the strategy and ones that work and ones that don't. And I guess I kind of put myself up there with a guy like Neil Harrison, who's been, you know, a definite professor of the sport. And, you know, I like to think that I've been around the block a few times, and that, you know, that's the big thing that I bring to the game. You know, I'm willing to voice my opinion. Like, a lot of times I get criticized for, you know, I'll listen to the other 2 guys and what they're saying, but they don't want to sort of stand up and say it. And I'd rather be, okay, I don't really give a damn, you know, let's put it out there and see what everybody thinks. You know, I just don't want it to be, you know, the one-man show at the other end calling the game and the other guy's kind of got to live with results. We're in it as a team. Let's win it as a team.
You know, I think that is the more modern approach. I mean, you see, I think Glenn Howard's a real cooperative skip with his team, consults them a lot. I think Russ Howard did that, so I don't think you guys are unusual in that aspect.
No, exactly. Like, you know, I think that in this game today, it's there are so many variables in this game, and I guess one of the things that we've always sort of prided ourselves in is that, you know, as soon as you can identify all those variables and get them working for you, you know, the better off you're going to be as a team and more successful on the ice. You know, ice conditions change, you know, each individual rock changes, you know, as people come and go in a curling club environment anyways, you know, the temperature changes and then the ice conditions start to change. So if you can identify all those things, you know, you're going to win more games than the other guy.
You know, you mentioned the fact you've won Briers with Al Hackner, Ed Wernick, and Wayne Middaugh, 3 guys who have been fixtures in curling for, you know, all those years. Different styles of play, different styles on and off the ice probably. What, however, is a trait that these 3 guys share?
I think they're they've all got a passion for the game first and foremost. You know, they love to play the game. I think Al Hackner, you know, he's another guy that is just he's a student of the history of the game, and you know, he can probably take you back into the 40s and 50s and rhyme off every Brier champion that ever was. And you know, to me, I think that's kind of cool. You know, and Hack and I used to reminisce about shots and stuff in certain games. Do the same thing with Eddie and even with Wayne. But you know, on the ice, these guys definitely had that edge. They had the touch. They knew the strategy, and they could read the ice, which is, you know, it's a big part of the game.
When you consider that you won your first Brier with Hackner in '85, there's probably nobody still out in the Asham World Curling Tour who's been competing at the highest levels for as long as you have. What are the developments in the game over that time you feel good about, and what are some of the things that disappoint you?
Wow, great question. You know, obviously when we started the game, there was no 3-rock or 4-rock rule. It was, you know, up and down the ice. I think the biggest developments in the game have probably been, you know, definitely ice conditions. I know Eddie Wernick and Paul Savage used to come up to Thunder Bay and play in the Grand Prix Spiel at the time and tell us, like, you know, we enjoy coming up here and playing on this Northern Ontario gravel. Well, you know, our ice conditions up there were, you know, they used to flood the ice and burn the ice, and there was no such thing as scrapers in those times. But when I moved to Southern Ontario, obviously there was big changes in the ice was the biggest thing you noticed. But I think over those years, guys like Shorty Jenkins have, you know, definitely taken the ice conditions to a different level, and it's getting more precise. So I think that's probably been one of the biggest changes in the game. Obviously, the other change is going to the 3-rock and then the 4-rock rule. I think that definitely changes the dynamics of the game, and you're never really out of the game because you can always kind of throw up that guard and get back in the game. What do I think has detracted from the game? I'm not so sure that the Olympics right now is, you know, it's great on one hand. It's kind of a catch-22 because on one hand, you're getting the popularity of trying to grow the sport in the U.S., and I think we all have got this vision of grandeur is if once the game hits big time in the U.S., you know, there'll be more money into the sport, there'll be more notoriety in the game. You know, I think everybody thinks that is the next big step for curling, and obviously from the last 2 Olympics, I think we've started to take steps to see that happen. On the other hand, I think what starts to happen though is you really start to get a parting of the teams. I think your top 10 teams versus your next 25 or 30 teams. I think there's a real big difference in the quality of those teams. Those top 10 teams, day in, day out, they're on the ice, they're playing, they're taking their physical conditioning to the next level, kind of like a Tiger Woods. And therefore, it's taking that game. It's sort of parting the waters in the game. You know, in yesteryear, though, too, you always had teams that were friends playing together, and so you may have had 1 or 2 guys that were weak on the team, but for the sake of the game and their friendships, they played together. Now I think you want to make sure that mano a mano on your team, you've got the best darn guy that you can have at lead, second, third, or skip to make sure that you've got a winner that's going to, you know, take you to that next level. So in the same token, I think the Olympics is good because of the notoriety that's coming to the game. But at the same time, the way I see the CCA kind of running this, I think they've got involved in sort of the cash bill circuit. And so some of those bills of yesteryear that were the grassroots of curling have started to go by the wayside. And I guess to me, you know, that's what was curling in years ago. It's changing, and now we're not seeing as many good spiels that you could go to on a week-out basis.
You know, that's a great point, and I sense, I sense part of it is you're a guy who loves the tradition of the game, and you sense a bit of that is lost, but that gulf between top teams and the next tier is really growing, and it does hurt the grassroots participation. You think of a great spiel like they used to have at the Royals, which just doesn't exist anymore.
100%. You know, the Royals, we used to go to the SGI in Regina. We always thought that was a great event. And years ago, it used to be the old PWA Classic in Winnipeg. You know, there used to be all these great events like, you had the Ottawa Spiel, which used to be a great event. Then all of a sudden, something started coming about on that event, and you know, now they're trying to reinvent it again. You know, I think if the CCA was to look at anything at all, it would be, okay, how do they get involved with their Canada Cups? You know, how do the slams all fit in? let's get a playing field that is level for everybody, and everybody can sort of take part and grow this thing together. I think we've got a bunch of sort of minutia, different niche people over here, no different than the slams and then the CCA, and everybody's kind of vying for their piece of control.
Yeah, it's I for one don't think the CCA should be as focused too much on the elite level in the past, and I think they have, the Canada Cup to me is the CCA running a cash deal, which is kind of bizarre.
Yeah, correct. And I think somewhere in there, is it good for the game? Yes and no. And I think because the same thing starts to happen. The teams that qualify for that, it's only 10 or 12 teams. I'd rather see them running the 48 or 60 team events, which a lot more people can capitalize on it, get exposed to the better play, and I think it just brings the overall caliber of play up.
Yeah, I'm not completely sure this is true, but I've heard that the intermediates in Ontario is the biggest, gets the most entries, mainly because it's guys who maybe can't commit at another level, but go in that.
You know what? That's the first I've heard of it, but it wouldn't surprise me now, because I think it goes back to what I said earlier, I guess, is that with the focus on the Olympics, you're getting a real parting in the ways, from your top 10 to the next 25 and then sort of thereafter.
Hey, a few off-season developments in the sport that sparked some other discussion, so let's cover those. First, the team ranking system in Canada that sees leads and seconds carry forward a smaller number of points than skips and thirds. As a team guy, I got to believe you don't like that.
It takes four to play the game, so doing that, I think it's just somebody's creation of, trying to give those back end guys more points. I don't believe in it. It should be equal all the way through. Now, if they want to continue the way they're doing it, should be 20% for each and then 20% for the team.
Yeah, I mean that makes the most sense to me, and it's bizarre. Like Jeff Stoughton said that just got dropped out, and they didn't expect anybody to quibble with it. Is odd, but anyways. Still time to change that. Finally, the other thing is 8-end games will be the standard on the Asham World Curling Tour this season. Where do you side in the 8 versus 10 debate?
In all candor, I hate it. Sure, I'm getting older and it gets easier on the body, yes, but I think all of a sudden when you get into an 8-end game, there's now too much emphasis on the hammer. And the hammer ends up being huge. And, I think in yesteryear, I think the teams that used to win with the hammer, I think there was probably a slight edge, but I think that edge is going to become greater. So you'll probably get to see probably 60-65% of the games won by the team with the hammer. And I think in the 10-end game, the longer the game goes, I think the better team will always rise to the top.
That's a good point. You're not alone in I think in the feeling that it will lead to more conservative play, teams grabbing leads and then running it out. You know what?
If you look at how hard some of these guys, like on Kevin Martin's team, the Kennedys and the Morrises, how hard these guys can throw the rock, and even the Reed Carruthers team, how hard these guys can throw the rock. They get a 2-point lead. Like that double peel almost becomes routine for them, and once again we're going to be back to running for home.
It's a bit like in 1990, right? When you guys won, you guys used to look for, when you played with Ed and John and Pat, you'd look for a big end and then run it out.
Eddie and the Bash Brothers,
And John actually said on the show that it was boring, but he said that's the way you won.
Oh, exactly. It was boring, and compared to what the game is now, I love what it is, but I still think it's always been 18 holes of golf. Are they going to change that so it gets in 3 hours rather than the 4 hours? I don't see that happening. So I think we got to stay with what the grassroots of our game is, and that's 10 ends. Like I know. Back in the day in the 70s when my dad played, it used to be 12 ends. Now we've gone back to 10 ends and now even 8. I don't know. I thought 10 ends was just 10 ends was a 2.5-hour game. It was a perfect amount of time.
Yeah, I'm starting to come around to that. I've been on the fence on this, but the more I hear, I don't know. We'll see what happens this year, but I know if you grab a big end, you can run away with it a lot easier in 8. There's a new CEO at the CCA, a guy who's been on the show already. What do you think about curling going outside the game to hire the top person?
I guess that remains to be seen. I don't know much about the guy. I couldn't even tell you his name right now.
Greg Stremlaw.
Greg Stremlaw. You know what? If he can bring new ideas to the table, and I think maybe this might be good for the game, because I think the problem with curling is that I think we've had too many people that have been on the inside for too long, and I think maybe we start getting very biased and very slanted as to our views and how it should work. And maybe a guy from the outside, maybe he brings a lot more equity and democratic view to the whole thing. So hopefully it'll work out well.
Well, he speaks from an NBA playbook, but I thought when I had him on the show, I thought he did say some things that were encouraging. So we'll see how it goes. Hey, we finished with the run back, Ian. I give you a topic, and you give me your thoughts in 1 to 3 words.
Okay, 1 to 3 words. So that's tough.
1 to 3. You know, I'm really liberal with it, though, so whatever. The return of the guy who once replaced you in a Madad lineup, Joe Franz.
Good for him. All the best to Joe. Kind of took it on the chin, but hopefully he's a better person for it now.
Yeah, I was glad to see him back, and he looked like he was playing awfully well in Oakville in September there. Yeah. The cancellation of the Asham 8-ender Open, now replaced by another event run by members of Randy Dutame's team.
Arnie has been a great ambassador for this game, and he's given his heart and soul to it. So from his standpoint, I'm sorry to see it go down. The fact that somebody's trying to pick it up and run with it, to me, hopefully it's still good for the game of curling.
I hope it's a bit of a wake-up call, just like you were talking about, in terms of needing some more spiels and running them in a way that gets enough entries. Maybe guys start to really put their heads together and figure out how to make that happen.
Correct.
The number of women's teams entering playdowns in the United States.
I got to be careful here.
I know. Like me, you're married to an American woman, so.
Yeah, you know what? Hopefully with the whole Olympic ideal, I guess if that brings more popularity to the game, and gets some more grassroots programs going, I guess I kind of watch the amount of dollars that they throw at some of these teams so they can travel and get better. To some extent, I guess I'd like to see them throw some money at some grassroots spiels in the U.S. that would attract the Canadian teams to come down and get exposure. I come from a small town, being Thunder Bay, and we had the Grand Prix that started there in the 70s, and fortunately they had enough money up for grabs that the Toronto teams and the Winnipeg teams would travel to Thunder Bay, and that's how the Thunder Bay teams got better.
On a micro level, what's happening with the U.S. women's is what you're talking about. I mean, there's 3 women's teams, your wife's team with Patty Lank being one of them, Deb McCormick and Cassie Potter, who a lot of the other women's teams just feel they don't have a chance against, so they don't enter.
Correct, and I think if they had some grassroots sort of bond spiels that a team that's kind of on the cusp could enter and get exposed to some of these teams, the only way they're going to get it better is by playing better teams. So it's usually in the bond spiels that people get to hone their skills. So
right.
I'm all for them trying to improve it, but obviously when they get a bye to their nationals, it's an easy way to do the planning, anyways.
Yeah, I don't even think the teams like your wife's would I think they'd prefer to have a decent playdown.
Oh, I'm sure they would, but right now it's like great. They don't have to play. They don't have to play a club or a zone or a regional playdown. They just kind of book their tickets to their nationals. It's kind of cool for them.
Right.
But the same token, I'm sure that even they would probably like to see, 50 or 100 good women's teams down there.
The mid-season and not quite end-of-season lineup changes that happened in curling last year.
Such as?
Well, such as Jennifer Jones replacing her lead, Brad Gushu replacing Jamie Korab right before the Players' Championship.
You know what? And that's the difficult thing with the game. And what's all the Olympics driving that is that everybody wants to, they're trying to take their team to the next level. And if a guy just isn't holding his own in his own position, they figured that they got to make a replacement. I guess the big thing is that for 3 guys on a team and they're dedicating so much time and effort, if there is a weak link, you're just spinning your wheels. So I can see why guys are doing it. It's unfortunate, but hopefully everybody learns and moves along.
Well, that's a good, both sides of the story there, I guess. You're right about that. If guys are committing and somebody's a weak link, it's a problem. But the old school in you probably thinks you wait till the end of the season, I bet.
Correct.
But finally, the Brier without a team from Northern Ontario.
Come on, there's Northern Ontario's got just as many curlers as PEI or New Brunswick or somewhere else. I guess I would, if I was in favor of anything, it'd be more like a challenge system like they use at the world level. And if we're going to take our bottom 2 teams from every year, and they've got to play off with 2 other teams to get in, I'd just sooner see that than you eliminate Northern Ontario.
Full disclosure here, my dad's president of the Northern Ontario Curling Association, but I really believe that the Brier formula is one they shouldn't mess with. Even not having a team from PEI one year would be a problem to me. I think, there's a lot of room for evolution in the game, but that formula works.
Well, it's, the Brier to me has always been a very unique event just because it is a province-by-province representation. Is it an actual democratic system that is equal for everybody across Canada?
No.
No, because you've got some provinces that are strong and others that are weak. So, to me, I guess I've always questioned our national championship on being, is it the best event that it could be? No, it's not, but it is truly a unique event. It's a lot of fun to be there, and for that respect, it's a thrill of a lifetime for most teams just to get there. But I guess once you've been a competitive player and you've played the game for a lot of times, I guess you start to look at the event and kind of go, well, our national championship should be a playoff of our 12 best teams in Canada, and let the winner come out. So,
well, I guess you could say now that's what the Canadian Olympic curling trials are.
Correct, and I think that unfortunately that only happens every 4 years.
Right.
So that's almost what our tour championship is. It's basically kind of the battle of the best of the best, so to speak.
Right, and I think as the World Curling Tour events capture more fans, we'll sort of recognize those as preeminent events.
Correct.
All right, hey, thanks, Ian. Thanks for your time and sharing your opinions, and good luck the rest of the way with the tough to play with John Meade.
Thanks again, Dino. All the best to you.
That's Ian Tetley on The Curling Show. As always, thanks for listening, and a special thanks to everyone who went to thecurlingshow.com, clicked on Support the Show, and made a small donation. In a new tradition, I'll randomly select one such patron and give them a shout-out as we end the show. Thank you, Kate Eels from Kelowna, BC, for your generous support. You are indeed a rockaholic.